Aaron felt that somehow he failed, he did not make the grade. He doesn't qualify. Only the princes qualify. God says, Shalcha Gadol B'Shalahem. No, you don't understand. Your participation is greater than theirs. What does that mean? Now, what is the significance of the menorah? And then the Torah says, Vayas Kain Aaron. Aaron did exactly as he was instructed. And Rashi cites the Midrash, Lagit Shrocho Shel Aaron Shaloshino, to reveal the praiseworthy of Aaron, that he did not deviate from exactly as he was instructed. Why should he deviate? We're not speaking of something so complicated. He was told to kindle, prepare the lights, and light them. Why should he deviate? But yet, the Torah has to reveal the praiseworthy of Aaron, that he did not in any way, Shaloshino, he didn't alter what God had prescribed. So we'd explained, the Gemara tells us that, firstly, what exactly is the significance of the menorah? What is its significance? Well, the menorah is illumination. What does it represent? It represents Torah Sheba'al Peh. It represents the oral law. The Gemara tells us that if a person wants to become wiser, when he says the Amidah, the Shemon Esrei, it should be in a southerly direction. So if we pray towards the east, in America, in the United States, or Northern Hemisphere, it should be southeast direction. Because since the menorah in the Mishkan, in the Beis HaMikdash, was on the southern wall, so the menorah represents elucidation, illumination. If you want to merit wisdom, you should pray in a southerly direction. If you want to merit wealth, what was on the northern side of the Mishkan, northern wall? It was the golden table with the 12 showbreads. This is Shulchan Malachim. That's royalty. Royalty is wealth. Therefore, if you want to become wealthy, yatzpin, it should be in a northeast direction, northerly direction, because that represents wealth. So the menorah is Torah Sheba'al Peh. That's the elucidation of the written law. Now, when we speak about where the menorah should be situated, the Torah says explicitly, michutz leparochis. It should be on the other side of the curtain. It should be in the Kodesh, in the Holy, not in the Holy of Holies. And why would I think it should be the Holy of Holies? The answer is very simple. If the Aron itself contained the luchos and shivrei luchos, the tablets and the broken tablets, and the Torah, and the menorah is the elucidation, which is the oral law of that, it belongs alongside the Aron. Therefore, the Torah says no. It should be on the outside of the curtain. Why? Because God says, don't think for a moment, I need your light. I don't need your light. You're not my illumination. You're doing it for yourselves. It has nothing to do with me. But in terms of representation-wise, where its location should have been alongside the Aron, the Ark, but not that you shouldn't delude yourself to think, I need your light. It should be on the outside of the curtain. That's the reason. So all the siyata d'shmaya, all the divine assistance that we're able to come upon the truth of Torah only comes through the kindling of that menorah. So now, you have a human body, perfect, or you have a piece of equipment, sophisticated beyond, but to activate its function, you need an energy source. And without the energy source, it's just components which are connected. But without the energy source, it has no value. You have a perfect body. If it's not infused with the soul, with a neshama, it's totally irrelevant. What is the neshama of Klal Yisrael? What is the life source of Klal Yisrael? That's the Torah. The Torah is the heartbeat of the Jewish people. Now, through who does that mechanism, who activates that mechanism? Who draws the energies that are needed for us to come upon the truths of Torah? That's Aaron. That's the Kohen. That's the kindling of the menorah. It's true. The 12 Nesiim, the 12 tribes, each of them has a representation of spirituality. Each one complements the other one. But who's the soul? What represents the soul of the Jewish people? This is the untainted tribe. Who's the untainted tribe? That's Levi. Levi did not participate. Firstly, they were not part of the bondage in Egypt. They did not become pagans. They were always circumcised. And they did not participate to any degree in the Chet Egel. Therefore, they were not tainted. So as the soul is pure, untainted, the soul of Klal Yisrael emanates through Levi and through the Kohanim. This is Shelcho Gedol B'Shelehem. Aaron, your participation has greater value. They may be the infrastructure of the spirituality, but you are the life source. You are the equivalent of the soul of the Jewish people, because you activate the energies that are needed for the Torah Sheba'al Peh, for the oral law, which only gives, that's the only value of the Torah Shebachsav. This is God's commentary. Now, the Gemara tells us that the Torah is compared to three liquids: water, wine, and milk. What is the characteristic of water? The characteristic of water is, in the words of the Gemara, Holech mimokom madrud lemokom nomuch. It flows from an elevated location to a low location. Eina Torah diktis ela mi shedato shvelo. Torah can only be acquired by a person who's truly humble. He has a humble spirit. Humility is crucial and key to merit that divine assistance, the siyata d'shmaya. If you're not humble or sufficiently humble, one doesn't merit that divine assistance. Aaron himself, who's the activator, who lights those lights, which activates this energy source, which gives us relevance to Torah. If as a result of hearing what he's told, that his participation is greater than theirs, if he prides himself as much as Nayota, what happens? This automatically causes a diminishment in that siyata d'shmaya. Because what determines the degree of siyata d'shmaya, that's determined by the degree of humility. But if he should pride himself, this somehow impinges and interferes and impedes that siyata d'shmaya from coming about. Vayaskein Aaron, la g'shroch shel Aaron shloshina. Although he was told this, he wasn't impacted as much as an iota, and he was the same Aaron. As a result of that, he was able to generate and activate the most advanced level of spirituality to be able to advance in Torah at the most advanced level. That's what it's about. That's Aaron. But again, it's only the Kohen, because the Kohen is the neshama of the Jewish people. As I said, it's the untainted soul, because the Leviim, from the very inception, never were pagans, were always circumcised, and they did not participate in the golden calf for that reason. There's another midrash which reveals very interesting. We find on Sukkot the 70 bulls, the 70 oxen that were brought, which were communal offerings. And every day, for 7 days, you bring so many. And on the last day, which we call Shmini Atzeres, which we no longer sit in the sukkah, we no longer take the 4 species, we bring 1 ox. The 70 correspond to the 70 nations of the world. This is the 70 bulls that are brought over the 7-day period. And every day we see there's a diminishment of those oxen, less and less. And finally, on the 8th day, we bring the 1 bull, which represents the Jewish people. We are the 71st nation. So the Midrash says over there, what is it analogous to? It's analogous to a king who makes a banquet and invites special dignitaries to the banquet. And his closest, most intimate friend, he does not invite. And the friend feels almost offended, or he feels the king somehow has some kind of claim against him that he's not aware of. Because how does he invite all these people, relatively speaking, who are strangers, and he leaves them out? Evidently, he's not aware of something which the king is aware of. And the 7 days pass, and he feels like a pariah. He's outside the community. Finally, the king summons him. He says, you don't understand. The way you perceived it, it's incorrect. The first 7 days when I invited all these dignitaries to the banquet, that's for them because they're at a distance from me. But you, because you're so special, we're going to have a private meal together that nobody else will be privy to our conversation or to our relationship. And therefore he says, Koshelai Pridaschem. Now that you're departing, it's just the two of us. Asu imi suda katano. Make for me just a small meal, and we'll just chat over the small meal. So there's a beautiful word from the Sfas Emes. It should say, Asu mi suda. Prepare a meal, and we'll have a meal. What's suda katano? A small meal. If two people want to get together, they haven't seen each other for years, best friends, and say, no, we're going to get together over a cup of coffee. Do they want to drink a cup of coffee? That's only the setting for them to meet. The meal, and he explains it with a beautiful allegory. A king has an inaugural ball, and he invites all the village bumpkins, and they come. And when they hear they're invited to the king's banquet, what do they think about? The wine, the food, the quality of the ambience. They're excited. The more sophisticated subjects of the king, what are they excited about? They're going to be able to meet the king. The food is only the setting to meet the king, but what they're interested in, being able to carry on to have even a word with the king. The other ones, they don't even begin understanding what that is. That's the difference between the Jewish people and the nations of the world. Asu simi suda katana. Therefore, the reason why I left you for last, that only reveals the intimacy that exists with us, which no one else is really privy to that relationship. So the Midrash says here, the Midrash Tanchuma says something similar. Aaron was offended. He says, relatively speaking, there's no comparison between the tribes and you. They were involved in the golden calf. They were estranged from me. They had to be reinstated. You people are the most special. Therefore, I don't want you to be part of their participation in the inauguration of the Mishkan. You will come at the end. Only because you're the most dear to me and you're the most special to me. So therefore, the way you sing it and understand it, that you're not aware of something that I'm aware of, it's just to the contrary. Because you are so special, therefore I'm singling you out to be singular in who you are. This is the Midrash. It's interesting. The same difference, I don't use the word disparity, between the nations of the world and the Jews, that's the difference between the 12 tribes and the Kohanim and the Leviim. It's a whole different dimension of reality. I once mentioned in the Maharal of Prague that we have 12 tribes, and the tribes are called Shiftei Koh, but they're 13 tribes, because there are 12 tribes who received a portion of the land. Levi did not receive a portion in the land. So really, the 13 tribes. Now, what is the numerical value of 13? What does it equal? Echod. The numerical value of Echod is 13. So therefore, we reflect the unity of God. We represent God's presence in this existence. Avraham Avinu was the first human being to recognize God as the total omnipotent being, and he referred to him as Adni. You are the master of the universe. First human being. We were chosen to be his people. We are his representation in existence. So the Maharal of Prague explains, we're not only in number 13, but even in status, spiritual gradations, we're Aleph Ches Daled. Who's the most special of the 13 tribes? Levi. Levi is the most special. Never tainted by idolatry, always circumcised. What's Ches? Who are the 8 tribes? The matriarchs, Yaakov had 2 wives who were matriarchs, Rachel and Leah. How many children did they have between the 2 of them? They had 8 children. Leah had 6, Rachel had 2. The concubines, which were not matriarchs, their children spiritually were of lesser status, although they were all Jews. That's Daled. So not only are we 13 in number, which is the numerical value of Echad, but in gradation-wise, we're Aleph Ches Daled. Who caps it off? Who's the one who's the Aleph? That's Levi. You're the most special. You're the first. So we reflect as it says, Bereshis bara Elokim, in the beginning, for the chosen God created this world. Who is, versus the Jewish people, who is the Rashis to us, or who's the first of that most special kernel of wheat? It's the Kohen. And that's why only the Kohen is qualified to eat Truma. No other Jew is qualified to eat the first tithing. He is the first, as the Jewish people are referred to as Rashis Tuasa. You're the first of the wheat, the first of the grain. The Levi never being tainted, he's the equivalent of that. So therefore, the difference, the discernment between the Jews and the Kohen and the Levi is similar to the difference between the Jewish people and the 70 nations of the world. It's the same level of discernment between the two of them. Exactly for that reason. We'd mentioned that the Gemara tells us that if not for the Chet Egel, the sin of the golden calf, the Jews at the time of Sinai reverted back to a level of pre-sin of Adam, and they would have lived eternally. It's only as a result of the golden calf, which is idolatry, that they revert back to post-sin. Levi never participated in the sin of the golden calf. So why did they remain eternal? They should not be subject to death. The answer is because they are part of the Jewish people. Being part of the Jewish people, you're subject to death. Being part of the whole. But in terms of themselves, who are they really? They shouldn't have been subject to death. So they are Aleph. Not to forget who they are the Aleph. They are Rashis Tuasa. They are the intent of creation, which was pre-sin. And the only reason why they were affected negatively, because they're attached to the Ches Dalet, because they're attached to the 12, therefore the Aleph became diminished, because they're part of the Echod, because we're the totality of the Jewish people, each one representing another aspect of our spirituality, therefore they were affected negatively, but they had to be, because the Jewish people are not just the tribe of Levi, it's the totality of all the Jews contributing and complementing, each of us complements the other. That's the understanding. Now, I asked the question today. We've mentioned many times in the name of the Maharal of Prague, in the name of the Rabbeinu Bachya, that numbers have great significance. The number 7 always connotes the natural order. Why? Because the world was created, there's 7 days of creation. So the natural order is 7. The number 8 always represents supernatural. Because there's 7, so 8 is beyond the 7. So 8 is always what we call L'mala min hateva, supernatural. 7 is natural. Now, where does the Maharal say this? The Maharal of Prague. He explains a male child is born naturally with a foreskin. So if he's born naturally with a foreskin, seemingly, he should remain with that foreskin. Torah says no. When the 8th day comes, that male Jewish child, you must remove that foreskin. So evidently, that's something doing rationally, and you wouldn't consider that's rational behavior. The answer is that's a spiritual dictate. That's God's dictate. That's supernatural. So to connote it being not within the context of natural, it's 8. The circumcision is on the 8th day. It's beyond the natural. That's why it's 8. Now, when did God give us the Torah at Sinai? It was the 50th day after we left Egypt. 50 is the 8 after 7 times 7. After 7 multiples of 7, 50 is 8. Therefore, when was the Torah given to us? That means we ascended 70 levels of purity, 70 gates of purity, and we reached the pinnacle of our spirituality. After 49 days, we became God's people on the 50th day. We became a supernatural people. Although we're physical people now, physical makeup, but the dimension of our value is out of the realm of the natural. That's the Jewish people. Proof of the pudding, as we say. You know, I always mention the Rav Yaakov Emden in his introduction to Hasidus says, one of the revealed miracles, although we no longer live in the era of revealed miracles, but it's still continuous, is the existence of the Jewish people. No people has has endured or experienced anything we experienced. All our oppressors have gone to the dustbins of history. We are the only nation which still exists as a spiritual God's people and hasn't ceased. It's against every conceivable level of odds that we should exist, and we're still thriving. That says that's a revealed miracle. That's real. The Jewish people are not a natural people. We transcend the natural order, and therefore we exist for that reason. So 8 is always supernatural. Circumcision is 8. The high priest, when he officiated, how many vestments did he wear? He wore 8 vestments. 8 is always supernatural. It's out of the ordinary because that has to do with God. He is the ultimate officiant. He enters into the Holy of Holies. He has relevance, direct that relation with God, which no one else has. Therefore, his vestments are 8 to connote and magnify this concept of out of the realm of the natural. That's 8 vestments he wears. Okay? It's that difficulty. You would say the menorah has 7 lights. It has 7 lights. The Mishkan, the Beis HaMikdash, is the location, Vosli Mikdash Shachanti B'Socham. It's the location of the Shekhinah, of the divine presence. The divine presence is unlimited, is infinite. It's not has no limitation. It's not bound by anything. So don't you think to connote that we should have 7 lights rather than 6? We should have 8 rather than 7. But reality is, it's the Shiva Neros. There's 7 lights. Why aren't there 8 lights? Which connotes the supernatural. Bothered me. Another question. We find that the Gemara tells us, based on the verse in the Torah, Eina bracha chola elo davar samam min ayin. Bracha can only come upon something which is concealed from the eye, something that's measured, that's something that's weighed, something that's liquid, solid, weighed, or measured. It has no relevance to bracha, no relevance to blessing. So Maharal of Prague explains why. The concept of finite quantification is only has relevance to the physical. The physical is finite, so we speak of quantification. Anything in the spiritual realm cannot be quantified. It's constant, it's unending. The moment you measure something or weigh something, you're setting it to physical criteria. The concept of bracha is a spiritual concept. You say you should be blessed. To what degree? Just be blessed. Blessing is unending. So the concept of blessing is spiritual. Therefore, something of spiritual nature. So if you bring in your harvest and you haven't quantified your harvest yet, and you say, and you pray to God, blessing should come upon my harvest, is a valid blessing. Because the harvest hasn't yet been quantified. The moment you measure your harvest, it says it's a prayer in vain. It's a supplication in vain. Because if you want bracha, blessing, which is spiritual, once you've given it a finite character, it has no relevance to blessing. Therefore, blessing is not coming upon it. Therefore, it's a supplication in vain. That's how the Maharal explains it. Now, we read about the building of the Mishkan, the specifications are so exacting. It had to be so many cubits, 2.5 cubits, so many this, so many that. And yet, the ultimate blessing emanates from the Mishkan. As the Midrash says, all the light to the world comes from the Mishkan or from the Beis HaMikdash, from the temple. But it's so quantified, it's so exacting. And despite all that, it's unending the blessing. How do we reconcile the two? So we once said that when you weigh or measure a bushel of wheat, that's exactly what it is. It is the way you quantify it. When we speak about the significance of the Mishkan, I'll give you an example. We spoke about the menorah. When all the divine assistance to come upon the truth of Torah only comes through the kindling of the menorah. The menorah, Moshe had difficulty making the menorah. That's one of the three things he had difficulty. But why was it so difficult? The physical form. You follow the blueprint, not so difficult. What was the difficulty? So we explained that every aspect, every vessel of the Mishkan was infused with a specific intent, because the Mishkan corresponded to creation. It is a microcosm of creation. What was the value of creation? The value of creation was purely for the sake of Torah. The Torah was the blueprint for creation. That means if you understand all the extent of what Torah is, then you will understand exactly what creation is, why creation had to be the way it is. But if Torah is infinite, and the only one who is unbound by anything is only God, how could a finite being infuse the Mishkan with something with infinite intent? So if the menorah represents all the siyatish, all the divine assistance to come upon the truth of the oral law, if the oral law is infinite, no human being has the capacity to infuse it with the intent that has to be infused. Therefore, Moshe wasn't able to make it. We're not talking about the physical menorah. We're talking about the infusion of the intent that it should be able to activate all the forces of this infinite wisdom. Only God could do that. So what did God say to Moshe? Take the block of gold, put it into the fire, and it came out of menorah. God, because it doesn't say you should make, it says te'ose. It shall be made. It was made, it came out. So we're talking about that infusion. Now, so the menorah itself, although it was a physical art object, but in terms of its significance, its value, its innate value, was unlimited. And that's true with the whole Mishkan, but nothing compared to the menorah, because this is the elucidation. Okay? The Rechaim HaKodesh cites the Midrash. When Adam ate of the tree of knowledge, God says, the earth shall be cursed. However, the location of the Mishkan, or the location of the Beis HaMikdash, although it's on the terrestrial level, it has greater value than the celestial level. That is the location of God's presence. So that location is the equivalent of pre-sin of Adam. The sin of Adam did not putrefy that location. That location remains pristine as before the sin of the golden calf. You understand? Now, if Adam wouldn't have eaten of the tree of knowledge, and we have 7 days of creation, what is 7? 7 in its natural state is what? Is supernatural. The world was supposed to be unlimited, eternal, no death. So the natural number, the supernatural number, because that was natural, was 7. After the sin, 7 became unnatural, because it became putrefied with the evil of the tree of knowledge. Therefore, now, what is out of the ordinary? That's 8. That's supernatural. But what about if you need a location which was not affected negatively by the tree of knowledge? So what is that 7? What does 7 represent? The 7 is the natural, which is supernatural. Therefore, the candles, the lights that you light, how many do you have? You have 7, not 8. 8 is something which is an abnormality of the function of existence. Of course, normally speaking, 7 is supernatural, because that's the way the world was initially supposed to function, if Adam wouldn't have eaten of the tree of knowledge. So anything which relates to the Torah itself, that's 7. What relates to us as human beings, for us to have relevance to that, we have to have 8. Therefore, Aaron, who was putrefied, and that's why he needed the vestments to qualify him to officiate. How many vestments did he need? He needed 8, because that relates to him. The Jewish people had to establish a relation with God. To what level did we have to ascend? That we are natural beings who are blemished and infused with this lethal evil as a result of the tree of knowledge. 8. 7 is natural, which is unnatural. We have to achieve the supernatural, which is 8. Therefore, the Mishkan itself, the lights were 7 lights. And what do those lights signify? That is the divine assistance for Torah. The Torah is untainted. The Torah 7 is natural for the supernatural. That's why it's 7. That activates the Siyat Shmai for that. We find that one of the miracles in the Mishkan, in the Beis HaMikdash, was Omdim Tzvufim Mishtachim Revochim. They stood pressed together, and they watched, and when they would prostrate themselves, there was enough room for all of them prostrate. How's it possible? If there's limitation, how do they prostrate themselves? But when it's time to bow, there's enough room to bow. What is that location? Within the realm of spiritual, there's no limitation. So if you have to bow, there's room to bow. How do we understand it? We can't understand it. Because our senses are limited to the finite, because we are finite beings. So the whole concept of time and space only has relevance to this existence. But in the reality, there's nothing limited. There's no limitation. There's a beautiful Maharal. The Maharal writes, asks a question, it's an obvious question. Before Moshe Rabbeinu passes away, the Torah tests to his physical condition. He was 120 years old the day that he passed away. Lo nos lecho lokos eino. His vibrancy was not in any way diminished, and his eyesight was perfect at the age of 120. You know, lahavdil elef avdolos. You know, you want a health update on the president, on the king, on the queen. The Torah, what does it give us an update on Moshe's health situation, his physical condition? When he passed away, he was in pristine, perfect health, as if he never aged, even in the grave. What's the Torah telling us? Now, the whole concept of cause and effect is within the physical realm. In the physical, something exists, and over time it wanes and eventually decomposes and disappears. The concept of cause and effect, everything is affected. And because it's affected, there's diminishment. That the Torah is attesting to Moshe's perfect health, confirms and declares he was an unaffected person. He was never affected. That means he's a spiritual being. Although he's a physical being, his significance was spiritual. Therefore, he was unaffected by life and by his age. Therefore, when he died, when he passed away, perfect condition, his eyesight, his vibrancy, even the grave. He's not subject to diminishment. That's the understanding. Now, one of the miracles of the temple was every Shabbos afternoon, they would divide the showbread, what we call lechem aponim, between the incoming group and the outcoming group. They would switch the Kohanim. They would switch every Shabbos, and they would divide the showbreads between the two of them. One of the miracles were that the showbread was hot. It was warm. It was like when they took it out of the oven, when they would divide it, a week later, it was still warm. Just that it was taken out of the oven. How is it possible? Everything cools off. The answer is, what is the location of the Mishkan or the Beis HaMikdash? This is pre-sin. This is constant. Whatever it is, the way it is, and it's supposed to be, it's constant. It's not supposed to cool off. It doesn't cool off. Therefore, every Shabbos when they would divide the showbread, although it was a week ago, it was taken out. It was no less hot than when it was taken out of the oven, for that reason. Again, these are all confirmations of the spirituality of the location, that the location had the status of pre-sin, not post-sin, although in the physical sense, it was post-sin. Doesn't make a difference. Therefore, the menorah was 7 lights, not 8 lights, because within what was supposed to be natural is really supernatural. We read that Reb Chanina Mendoza, who was known as the Gemara tells us that every day a heavenly voice comes out of Sinai, of Chorev, that announces the world, Kolam Kulo Nizam Shul Chanina B'ni. The whole world is sustained in the merit of Chanina ben Dosa, Rav Chanina ben Dosa. In his merit, the millionaire could write his check And anybody who has any food on his table, or any being which is sustained by God, is the merit of Rav Chanina ben Dosa, who only had a kav charubin. The dialogue of kav charubin, he had a paltry measure of carob from Shabbos to Shabbos. In his merit, the whole world is sustained. Mar tells over a story. He had gone and he had harvested wheat for Pesach, for matzah. And he's going with his Arab attendant, and they come to a river. And you realize that the wheat becomes wet, the wheat is not going to qualify for matzah because it's going to become fermented. It becomes chametz. He has a problem. How do you get the donkey to the other side of the river? So he comes to the river, and Rav Chanina ben Dosa says, river split. The river doesn't split. You know, Rav Chanina wasn't a boastful person. You know, the world wasn't at his beck and call, so to say. He didn't expect it to be. He was a very humble man. He says, river split, I got to get to the other side. And I have a problem, because if the wheat gets wet, it's not going to qualify for matzah. River doesn't split. Rav Chanina says, if you don't split, I will decree that water should never flow on this location ever again. The river splits immediately. Rav Chanina ben Dosa goes to the other side. His Arab attendant was stuck on the other side with the donkey. So Rav Chanina ben Dosa says, you have to split for my Arab attendant. Doesn't pay attention. He says, if you don't split, I will decree water should never flow on this location. River splits, the Arab comes across, the wheat remains dry. Miracle. For Rav Chanina ben Dosa, that's the way it's supposed to be. Why did God create this existence? L'chvodi barosiv, for my glory. Who is God's glory? If the whole world is sustained in his merit, Rav Chanina ben Dosa is not his glory. One man generates enough spirituality, the whole world should be sustained in his merit. So the river splitting, that's called unnatural, so that's called natural. That's what's supposed to happen. The Gemara tells a story. Rav Chanina ben Dosa had a daughter-in-law, and mistakenly, she had a large vessel of vinegar. She had no oil for Shabbos candles. And she put the wick, and then she realized it's vinegar. And he saw she was like down. So he says, what are you upset about? She says, not going to have light for Shabbos because I put the wick in vinegar and I have no olive oil. He says, what's the problem? No problem. As God decrees olive oil should burn, God could decree the vinegar should burn. He says, why don't you try it? She lights the wick, and sure enough, it burns. And it says that flask of vinegar burned until Motzoi Shabbos, that they were able to say Bor Mireish, Havdol on that wick, on that light. It burnt longer. Miraculous. You realize for a Chanina ben Dosa, it's not a miracle. Well, for the ordinary person, that's out of the ordinary. It's unusual. It's supernatural. But you realize Rav Chanina ben Dosa wasn't in any way depleting his merits by altering nature. For Rav Chanina ben Dosa, whatever he needed, it was there for him. It was at his beck and call. Because God created the world for this kind of person. The Gemara tells over a story. Rabbi Gamliel was the prince of Israel, and his son was deathly ill. So he sends a message to Rav Chanina ben Dosa. He should pray on behalf of his son for recovery. And his wife hears this. And he says to his wife says, you mean, you're not a great enough Torah sage? You're the prince of Israel. He was the Nasi of the Jewish people, Rabbi Gamliel. What are we asking Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa to pray? He says, you don't understand. I am like a minister before the king. He's like a slave before the king. A slave, if he has to go into the inner chambers of the king to clean his bedroom, he goes there because he is the subject. He is the slave. I'm a minister. A minister only comes before the king when he's summoned. There's no airs. There's no sense. He's humble. Every fiber of his being is purely to sanctify my name. It's a different level. And when he prays, God listens differently than when I pray. He could go into the inner sanctums and he's able to knock on that door and the king opens the door for him. I have to wait outside to be called in. Therefore, his prayer has greater value than my prayer. But it's miraculous. He turns over worlds. God says, I'm more than happy to turn over worlds. That's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for him to knock on my door. So again, 7 is supernatural, is natural. For the ordinary person who lives his life unnaturally, not the way God wants it, then the unnatural is natural, and the supernatural, which is supposed to be natural, is supernatural. Therefore, for these kinds of people, for Moshe Rabbeinu, not a problem. Yaakov Avinu, he was able to survive, despite everything. How does he survive? It's a miracle. He defeats an angel. He stands up, survives a Lavan and Esav. How's it possible? Because if you're at that level, there's no problem. And the miracles in the Beis HaMikdash, that's God's location. God's location is not subject to the curse of Adam. Evil cannot go within that proximity. When was the temple destroyed? When we failed. When we weren't worthy. The Shekhinah departed. The moment the divine presence departed, now it's subject to the curse. Because God's no longer there. It's not pre-sin, it's post-sin. Post-sin, now it's subject to destruction. Now it's vulnerable. God's there, it's not vulnerable. The Gemara tells us when Jews there's a mitzvah to visit the Temple Mount 3 times a year. Could you imagine? Every Jew packs up his family, everybody's going to Yerushalayim, to the Temple Mount. Your fields are left unwatched. They didn't leave a security system to watch the fields. The fields are ripe with fruits and wheat to be harvested. We're away. The enemy could come and take everything. How was it protected? When we were doing the right thing, it was protected. There was divine protection. Nobody would dare go near it. Why? The Torah tells us that if the Jew lives the way he should live, that if the Jew abides and lives the way he supposed to live, when they see the tefillin on the Jew's head, they will revere you. They will revere you. There'll be an aura. And even the non-Jew will sense that aura. What does it mean? It's unnatural. Vis-a-vis the nations of the world, it's unnatural. Vis-a-vis us, that's called natural. That's the way the Jew's supposed to look. Just end with one story. Many years ago, there was an organization. It had to do, it fought the missionaries in Israel. It was called Pe'ilim. Pe'ilim means like the doers, the initiators. And the missionaries took many children, and they actually took them into the convents in Israel. And they would go, and they would somehow smuggle them out, take them control of the lives and whatever, provide, because these were many of the immigrants who came from North Africa, wherever it was. And the head of this organization, his name was Rabbi Hirsch. And he was a student of Rav Aaron Kotler. He was an American. And he had to go to Yemen. Went to Yemen. And he was met by one of the government officials in Yemen. I don't know, maybe he went on a camel in those days. He arrived in Aden, and the government official meets him, and he had a beard, this Rabbi Hirsch, and he had payas. If a person, a non-chosid, they wear the payas behind the ear. It's not like side locks. If you ever see pictures of Yemenite Jews, they look exactly as the Jews looked at Sinai. They have very wiry hair, and their side locks extend downward. So the Muslim official meets him at the airport, says to him, Rabbi, all the Jews here have side locks. Where are your side locks? So he takes him from behind his ear and he shows him. He also has side locks. So he says, why don't you wear them like the Yemenites wear them? Are you embarrassed? Is there something to be ashamed of? That's the way you're supposed to wear them. You're supposed to reveal them. They're not supposed to be hidden behind your ear. You understand? That's called natural. The Jew has to naturally look like a Jew. Not to somehow go disguised and look like something else. That's what the Muslim said to him. What are you hiding? This is your badge of pride. For the Jew, as Yaakov said to Shechem, to be uncircumcised is a disgrace for us. Circumcision, that's the badge of honor. That's bris chasham sarenu, as we've heard. That's the covenant engraved in our flesh, every Jew. When the Nazi wanted to identify a Jew, he would actually pull down his pants to see who was circumcised. Then he would kill him. We were killed because we had the badge of honor, because we had God's covenant engraved in our flesh. Therefore, we were martyrs. Every Jew that was killed was a martyr because he was a Jew. They had the badge of honor of spirituality engraved in their flesh. That's natural. The Zohar says Adam was created without a foreskin. The foreskin was only a derivative of the evil of the tree of knowledge, and that caused the covering. So that's unnatural. Being uncircumcised is unnatural. Circumcision is natural. So again, the 7 lights which generate the most advanced level of spirituality, and that's what we say, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. The study of Torah is the equivalent of all the mitzvahs combined. That's generated by the 7, because the 7 in that context is natural and not unnatural. To be continued. Everybody should have a good day.
Thank you.
You too, Rabbi. Thank you.
Be well.